When you play the Game of Thrones, you
subscribe and like,
or you die. There is no middle ground.
Alright, hello YouTube, welcome back to the Grease Goblins YouTube channel. In today's video, we're going to be doing a look at the Pink Letter, who wrote it, and looking at all the candidates that possibly could have known all the information in it. Now, I also want to say, this is a throwback to my first video I ever did on the channel, where I was talking about the Pink Letter and the Stannis plot in general. This video is going to be building upon that video, and kind of talking about more knowledge as I've kind of looked at other people's theories on this video idea. And all that. So let's get into the video. But before we do, if you guys like to like, subscribe, and comment, please do it up channel growers your people that might like this content as well. And also, if you guys like to follow the Twitter and Instagram page for the channel, please do. It's where you can get updates for the channel a lot quicker. And also, you can get in contact with me if you would like, because YouTube sometimes just doesn't show me comments or anything. So if you guys want a requested video, I would go there. Also, if you guys just want to see my personal life a bit more, that'll be there for you in the description. And let's get into the video. So, I think the main 3 or 4 candidates for who wrote the Pink Letter are Stannis, Ramsay, Mance, and then also Bowen, Marsh. I think those are the top 4. Possibly Mel, you can maybe be able to throw in there as another candidate, but I think she's very highly unlikely. But let's look at the most unlikely characters first. So Mel. Why would Mel send this letter to Jon? Because it just doesn't make a lot of sense. I think Mel kind of understands how Castle Black would go right now, and I think she knows that, oh, if he was to do all this, he would die. And Mel doesn't want Jon to die. She constantly warns him that she sees this is going to happen if he doesn't, reverse course. And also, Mel, I don't think would believe that Stannis is dead. I don't think she would really suggest that. I guess the motives here would be she gets Jon and the wildlings to help Stannis to go south, and all that. But also, how would she know that Mance got captured and all that? I mean, I guess it's not confirmed yet, so possibly she could have seen this, or maybe this is a lie that they weren't captured. I'm not sure, but again, I don't think Mel is the person that wrote this. Doesn't make a ton of sense. Also, the wax used by Ramsay, right? Like kind of that, idea. It's not, Mel has no real way of getting that. Maybe she could have tricked it, just something along those lines. I don't know. Mel does have a lot of magic, so maybe she could have done that. But again, I think very unlikely. I think if we're going off percentage chance of all the characters, maybe like a 5-10% chance she did it. I just don't see it happening. Bowen Marsh has more motives because Jon is kind of destroying the Night's Watch in his eyes. I did a video about Bowen Marsh a couple weeks ago, and it was a very mixed bag. A lot of you agreed with me, a lot of you didn't agree with me, but Bowen Marsh more or less has all the motives, right? He wants to get Jon out of the Knight Commander position and ends up being one of the biggest proponents for killing him. It makes sense to give them a reason to actually kill Jon. Jon's leaving the Night's Watch, breaking his vow. That would make sense. But with this being said, how would Jon know how Ramsay speaks, all of the information that is in this letter? I mean, some of it, a lot of it could be lies, but again, it just seems like way too much knowledge that Bowen Marsh wouldn't know. Again, we run into the same problem of how does he get kind of the... I'm trying to think of what the stamp is. It's like on the right side of the screen where my face cam is. Whatever that is, how would Bowen Marsh get that? He just couldn't. So again, Bowen Marsh, very unlikely. I think your main 3 candidates for who wrote the Pink Letter is Mance, Stannis, and Ramsay. Now, one of the characters I'm going to eliminate for one reason, but we'll talk about that in a sec. But Mance. Could Mance have wrote the Pink Letter? And the answer is yes. If you believe in this theory, I don't doubt you. I think he has the motives, right, for wanting Jon to come south to help rescue them, because they're kind of in a really awkward situation where they can't get out of the castle, even if they're not like in prison or anything. He's in a bad spot. 2, he would know all the information in this letter. He would know what Stannis' situation is right now, and I think there is a hint of truth in that, right? Because in the Pink Letter it says that Stannis is dead, that Ramsay has his flaming sword. Well, the thing is, I've talked about the theory that I think Stannis is going to fake his death, really. So this theory goes into an idea that the phrase come onto this ice that the Baratheon forces have been fishing. They fall in. The Manderleys switch sides, and basically what ends up happening is Stannis, a lot of his troops put on the Frey uniforms. They walk back with the Manderleys. They open the gates with Stannis' sword, maybe with his crown as well, and say, we killed Stannis. They come back, and everybody believes Stannis is dead. So that's how I'm going to use the justification for both Mance and Ramsay on why that information would be there. So Mance, again, knows all these things. He's in Winterfell, so he could possibly get the pink ink or whatever to send this. Even some of the language kind of used, like the Black Crows, is something Mance would say, referring to the Night's Watch. So that makes a lot of sense, right? I think Mance has a lot of motive. My only problem here with this theory is I do believe Mance is actually in prison, so I don't think he would be able to write the letter. I also don't know how he would get the letter to Jon. I guess he could steal a raven or something along those lines. So for me personally, I'm not a huge fan of this theory. Also, if you look at the idea of how did Ramsay kind of come to the conclusion that Jon was the one behind fake Arya and, you know, Theon getting to Jon, it would have to be through, they end up figuring out that, like, through torture or whatnot, that Mance and the washerwoman were actually sent by Mel and Jon. So I don't really like the Mance theory, but I do see why you would believe in it, and it very well could be possible. So the number 2 candidate, let's talk about, is going to be Stannis. So Stannis, for me, has all the means to do this. He has all the motives to do this. It makes sense, right? Stannis is in a bad place army-wise. He needs reinforcements. He needs food. He needs all these things. So it makes sense that Stannis would actually, you know, send the letter, right? He has Theon there. So Theon would be able to tell him what Ramsay's kind of language is and the situation within Winterfell, and also would fit directly into what I believe Stannis' plan is for taking Winterfell. So again, all the information's there. This pink, like, ink, I guess, could have been with Theon, right? Theon could have had it. So we know all of these things are very possible. But the question is, does it fit Stannis' character? Whereas I would say with all the other characters, it kind of fits their character, and would they do it? It doesn't fit Stannis. Stannis is a lot of things, but he's not really a liar and a manipulator. And if you look at kind of what this is being said that Stannis is basically pretending to be Ramsay. It doesn't fit Stannis' character, and it's the only reason I don't like this theory for Stannis is because it doesn't fit his character. It's not something George, I think, would do with Stannis' character, because Stannis seems like he has a plan, and like I said, like he does. So I don't think he'd be desperate enough to, you know, completely change his overall personality, and going to kind of a player of the Game of Thrones like a Littlefinger or a Varys just doesn't like sit right with me. Stannis is my favorite character, and to me, looking at Stannis' character throughout all of the books, this just doesn't feel like him. So I'm going to remove Stannis as well. Now, you know what? I'm going to throw a curveball in, right? I am going to throw a curveball in. Could this, before we get to who I think it is, could this have been Littlefinger or Varys? They both have a ton of spies. They might be able to figure out this information. For Littlefinger, this could possibly help him if Sansa was to come north. I don't think she's going to right away, especially. I think she's just going to be hanging out in the Vale for a little while. Maybe she gets in the Aegon camp. But it makes sense because it would give it to where Stannis would be in power, yes, but we know that the Starks would eventually come into power, and that's something that maybe would help Sansa, right? Littlefinger could manipulate that, but again, I think there's just too much information we don't know in regards to Littlefinger being able to write the pink letter. How would, you know, Littlefinger know how Ramsay speaks? How would he know all the situation going on? And the same kind of applies for Varys as well. So I think on that regard, I don't think the pink letter could be written by either one of those two. I did want to bring them up in this video, though. So the person that wrote the pink letter is Ramsay. I think it is Ramsay. I think if you look at all the information I talked about with the Stannis kind of being dead theory, where he kind of fakes his own death, it makes sense because that would be something that's truthful that Ramsay says, because he personally would believe that. Two, this language just sounds like Ramsay. The only thing that's kind of a wrinkle is the Black Crows part. Maybe he picked that up from Mance or something like that. But you know, he has the ink for the Boltons. That would make sense. It's signed by Ramsay. I personally think this just fits Ramsay's character, and people kind of like to say, how does this fit into the next book, right? What are the Boltons' relevance? Because we know that they just can't be a big part of the next book, and I still think that's true, right? I think the whole point of this letter is to get Jon killed. I think that is one big one, to be the last nail in the coffin for Jon's story at the Wall, and I think the other part is to get, when Jon does get resurrected, to continue what he was going to do and get him to go south. So the whole point of this letter, I think, was to, you know, eventually bring Jon south. And it fits all of Ramsay's personality. It fits his character perfectly. So I personally, this might seem really basic and it might seem not as fun, but I do believe Ramsay was the one that wrote the pink letter. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments. Do you think this was Ramsay? Do you think it was Mance? Do you think it was Stannis? Who do you believe actually wrote the pink letter? I don't know how many different characters you can go with this theory, because I think you have to find a character that has enough information in Winterfell to be able to do the theory, and there just isn't many characters like that. I feel like almost every character at the Wall, none of them have enough information to be able to write this letter. So then it turns to characters at the Wall. Maybe there's some characters like Wyman Manderly possibly could have wrote this, but again, where does he get the pink like signing thing? Where does he, I guess he would have known all this information, but why would he send for Jon? He doesn't really know Jon. He doesn't, you know, the wildlings again are another wrinkle into this. So there's a lot of problems with this theory when you try to go outside of, I think, the main three being Mance, Stannis, and Ramsay. I think all three could have possibly done it. I think Ramsay is the most likely. I think there's just problems with both Stannis and Mance, to me, that kind of damn those theories. But I do think there is a chance of George, I guess, made them make sense. Because as of right now, I think Ramsay's the only one that purely makes sense with the information we have right now. If we walk into the next book and we find out more about what's going on in Stannis' camp and it gets more desperate maybe, and right before the battle, it's kind of like, oh, is Stannis really going to win? He sends a letter and kind of puts forward his plan in motion. I could see it. If Mance is not in prison at this point and he's just really desperate, like they're actively looking for him because they know Mance is in the castle and all that, maybe I could see Mance doing it as well. But it's just one of those things where I don't think we have enough information yet to definitively say it's anyone besides Ramsay. So that is the theory. Thank you guys all for watching. I hope you guys all enjoyed, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye, guys.
If you think this has a happy ending, you haven't been paying attention.